New York City, 1920. Before the gleaming skyscrapers. Before the glamour. But what history never told you, you're about to see. Because this is different. Reconstructed with artificial intelligence, frame by frame, exactly the way it really was. How did people survive in Manhattan's overcrowded tenements? What could you actually eat with just a few cents a day? What was it like to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week with no breaks? And what really happened on the streets of New York after dark? Stay until the end, because the answer to that last question is going to genuinely shock you. 1920. Over 5 million immigrants had arrived at the port of New York in the past 2 decades. They came from Italy, Poland, Russia, Ireland, with one suitcase, with one dream, and with absolutely no guarantees waiting for them. Upon arrival, they went through a medical inspection. Teeth, eyes, lungs, anyone deemed sick was sent back. Imagine crossing the ocean for weeks and being turned away at the front door. It happened to about 2% of everyone who arrived. Those who passed went straight to the Lower East Side, the most densely populated neighborhood in the entire world at the time. Some blocks had over 1,000 people per acre. For comparison, Manhattan today averages around 70 per acre. The tenements had small rooms where 8, 10, sometimes 12 people slept. No ventilation, no natural light. In summer, temperatures hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit. In winter, if you had cold, you were lucky. The bathroom, when one existed, was shared by the entire floor. One room for dozens of people. But here's what's most surprising. Even so, people cooked. They celebrated. They sang. Life didn't stop. Now let's talk food. For 5 cents, you could buy a piece of rye bread and a slice of pickled herring. For 10 cents, a bowl of cabbage soup at a kosher restaurant on Delancey Street. That was lunch for most workers. On the streets, vendors sold roasted sweet potatoes, chestnuts, and corn, all for a few pennies. This was the informal economy that fed New York. Without these vendors, half the working class would have gone hungry. Now, work. Most immigrants went straight to the factories, what were called sweatshops, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, no mandatory breaks. For $5 to $7 a week, barely enough to keep a family alive, women earned less, much less, and they've made up the majority of the workforce in the garment district factories. In 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire killed 146 workers, mostly young immigrant women, because the emergency exits were locked shut. That event changed everything. It triggered strikes, labor laws, and the rise of unions. But in 1920, most of those improvements were still arriving. Daily life remained brutal for factory workers. Children, many of them worked too. The 1916 child labor law existed on paper, but enforcement was weak. Kids as young as 10 or 12 sold newspapers, shined shoes, hauled goods. They helped support the family. But there were schools, and many immigrant parents insisted their children would study. It was the bet on the future. English was the currency of social mobility. Those who learned it fast moved up. Those who didn't stayed stuck in the hardest jobs. The city itself was a fascinating chaos. Electric trams, horses, and the first automobiles, all sharing the same narrow streets. The subway had existed since 1904. A ticket cost 5 cents and could take you from anywhere in Manhattan to anywhere else. It was the great social equalizer. In the same car, a factory worker sat next to a merchant, a rare sight for the ERA. And the night. 1920 was the birth of the Jazz Age and Prohibition at the exact same time. In January of that year, the Prohibition Act went into effect. Alcohol was illegal across the United States, but that stopped no one in New York. Speakeasies, illegal underground bars spread across the entire city. Espanol say New York had 30,000 of them. You'd knock on a door, give a password, and enter a basement transformed into a dance hall. Live jazz, illegal drinks, and a packed crowd. Jazz came from the South, from New Orleans, and exploded in Harlem. The Harlem clubs were the most alive places in the city, but there was a brutal contradiction. Black musicians played for white audiences, and many times couldn't even enter through the front door of the same club. Even so, Harlem was electric. The Harlem Renaissance was being born, an unprecedented cultural explosion in American history. Langston Hughes, Duke Ellington, Zora Neale Hurston, all creating, writing, performing in that same year of 1920. But let's get back to the question we promised to answer. What really happened on the streets of New York after dark? Records show that in 1920, New York logged over 200 murders a year. The police were corrupt, and much of the crime was tied to organized crime networks. The Italian mafia, Irish gangs, Jewish crime syndicates, all competing for control of the neighborhoods. Lucky Luciano, Arnold Rothstein, a young Al Capone, all building their empires on those very streets. And what shocks isn't the violence itself. It's that most of the victims were the immigrants. The poorest, the most vulnerable, the same people who crossed oceans, who slept in tenements, who worked 12-hour days, they paid the heaviest price. And yet, and this is the most remarkable part, they stayed. They built families, they opened businesses, they changed the world. Because no matter how hard it was, New York was still the city where you could change your life. And they knew it. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those immigrants became doctors, teachers, presidents, filmmakers. The story continues. The New York of 1920 wasn't glamorous. It was harsh, unjust, loud, and raw, and at the same time, vibrant, courageous, and unforgettable. If you made it this far, you know more about 1920 New York than 99% of people. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Tell me in the comments, which part shocked you the most? The factories, the speakeasies, the tenements. Hit the bell. The next episode goes into the 1930s, the Great Depression knocking on New York's door. You're going to want to see that. See you then.